Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About Shh. This podcast is aimed to help you navigate your relationships, maximize your pleasure, and get the most out of your sex life. Each week, we cover different topics related to the full spectrum of sexuality and romance. My name is Tila. I'm a sex educator, relationship expert, and published author. People often ask me why I chose to get into sex ed, and it's because talking about sexuality is my favorite topic. I love to read it, teach it, talk it, everything. I love helping people connect with and understand their own sexuality and how to foster healthier relationships. So if you're struggling with an area around sexuality and relationships and have a question that you'd like answered, please send in your questions to questions@exploresextalk.com. So what are we covering today? Today we are going to talk about porn, the magical world of porn. Well, at least an introduction to the magical world of porn. Most people have heard about porn and know what it is, but let's not make any assumptions here. Pornography, often called porn, is a representation of sexual behavior that is meant to excite and cause sexual arousal. It can be in many different forms, like video or picture, podcast, books, statues, any other media you can think of. The word itself, pornography, originally was defined as any work of literature or art depicting the life of prostitutes. It's derived from the Greek words porni, which means prostitute, and I think it's pronounced graphene, which means to write. Now, a lot of people ask if porn is good, and like so many other areas of sexuality, the answer is a bit gray, and really depending on the context of the situation. Porn can be a fantastic sex aid just as much as it can be degrading, destructive, or addictive. So let's unpack this a little bit. For starters, perceptions around porn are extremely subjective and are going to be based heavily on a person's upbringing and culture. In different areas of the world, it's going to be seen in a different light. Religion and views on sex also have a huge impact on how people see porn. What is acceptable in some areas is, considered positively obscene and unthinkable somewhere else. And if people are raised to believe that sex and sexual acts are taboo or obscene, there's a pretty good chance they're going to see porn in a similar light. Porn, it's important to know too that it varies really considerably in how it's made. Things like background score, types of actors, types of activities that are shown, even the overall tone or focal point of porn is going to change with the cultural values of where it's being produced. All of these aspects play a role in how people see pornography and if they classify it as erotic or obscene. Now, pornography is pretty much always straddling that line between erotic and obscene. The content is pretty much always sexual, and what is arousing is going to vary from person to person. So the same representation could be seen as erotic by one person, but totally obscene by someone else. It's also true that some forms may not be considered porn at all. It depends on the standards that somebody has, but a different person could see that same piece as porn. So everyone across the world has a different measurement of what counts as porn, and that makes it highly subjective. It's also highly influenced by politics, religion, race, gender, and the sexuality of a person. That all changes, what that means for porn and the type of porn that they might be interested in. So the first stop in considering if porn is good or even right for you is to unpack some of your personal feelings about it. Acknowledge what prejudice you may have, what you might be bringing to the proverbial table where porn or erotica is concerned. Your opinions and your mindset about porn and sexuality are going to play a huge role in how you feel about it, its use, and whether or not it might be something that's for you. The next thing we need to realize is that how much porn we consume and how we react to what we're seeing can actually end up impacting our satisfaction with our own sexual experiences. Research looking at how people rate their sex lives after consuming large amounts of porn have actually found that people tend to end up preferring what they see on the screen over their actual live experiences. Now, a lot of this stems from the fact that porn is orchestrated to be, this ideal experience. It's a fantasy. We don't see disappointment or small satisfaction depicted on screens. Everything is always hypersexualized, perfect, and ending in a big show of orgasm or orgasms. Real world sex is not always that way. What we experience with our partners is going to vary based on mood, exhaustion, stress, mindset, hormones, and all the million other little things that can impact us and impact our performance. And then we need to factor in the same combination of factors for our partner in that moment. And the reality is it's just not always a perfect match, and that's okay. But the thing is, so when we masturbate to porn, we're actually conditioning our body's responses. We create stronger connections with the types of stimulus in porn that we're watching. So if these elements aren't present when we go to have sex with our partners, the experience can actually end up feeling, less intense or maybe even less satisfying than our experience masturbating to our preferred porn. It can also be why when we use the same type of porn over and over and over again, we start to look for something that's a little bit more intense. This is often how people start off with simple porn, but can very slowly develop a strong preference for more intense porn that they never would have wanted when they first started watching porn. So we sort of talked about the ideal experience of porn and the fact that it's fantasy. So that's something we need to realize about our porn consumption, is that, we have to think about the realities of porn. It's pretty common that people think that they can learn better sex techniques from watching lots of porn. I've talked to a lot of young men who have bragged about the skills that they've developed, all tips from watching porn. But there's something really, really important you need to remember about porn. Something that's extremely and epically important to understand. It's fantasy. It is not real. Now, some people may think, what do you mean porn isn't real? It's sex, like clear as day, and the sex is clearly real, so how can porn not be real? And like I said, porn is all about fantasy. That's literally the whole point. It's scripted, it's designed to be stimulating and exciting. Every shot is thought out, and in a fantasy world, two or more people, often strangers, come together and they're having sex within minutes of meeting each other. These strangers just know how to please each other, what the person wants. And usually everyone is shown as always super into it. The people who perform in porn are actors. They are paid to act like they are enjoying it, whether or not they actually are. And, their money is earned from putting on a good show, not focusing on enjoying what they're doing. I'm sure many porn actors do enjoy what they do, but they're still paid to look like they enjoy it. It doesn't mean that they can enjoy their job, but it's a job nonetheless. I mean, think about it. Have you ever had a day where you've had to go into work, but you really didn't feel like it? I'm sure you have. We all have. But what do? We put on a smile, we head off to our job, and we do the best that we can. Porn stars are no different. So the other thing to be aware of about, the scripted aspect of porn is that it is scripted and designed for its intended audience. But there's a lot of things that you don't see. Some scenes can be reshot or are reshot multiple times to get different angles. There's a whole bunch of people on the set to control the cameras, lighting, direction. The industry has workers called fluffers who help actors stay stimulated and ready between takes. The entire porn environment is, carefully controlled, and it's carefully thought out packaged sex. None of this makes porn real. What isn't shown during porn is all the aspects of sex that do take place in the real world. In the real world, there's negotiation and communication. People discuss boundaries, consent, sexual desires, more. These things are rarely, if ever, addressed in porn. They're usually totally ignored. Just a quick list of a few things. Porn definitely doesn't show any realities of sex, like, for example, sex positions not always working the way you expect them to. There are moments in sex where it's silly and laughter is appropriate. People having different levels of arousal at different times, that's not something you see. Not everybody's ready to have sex all the time. Porn never shows the negotiation of consent or boundaries. Vanilla sex is just as okay as kinky sex, which is not something that's always addressed in porn. Another thing, not all sex ends in orgasms, depending on the relationship or the limitations of the people or the mood of the moment. Not all sex extends for half an hour or more. Porn rarely shows any body types that are different. It's pretty much all the same body types. They never cover safer sex methods. Every penis and vulva pretty much looks the same. And, it's rare to see porn that address having sex during that time of the month, which is something that happens too. So all of these things are just kind of the tip of the iceberg, but this list kind of gives you just a few ideas of the ways that porn fails to pass as real sex. And an important thing to remember is that what looks good in porn does not always mean that it feels good. A lot of porn is geared towards men, and heterosexual men in particular. And that's not a bad thing. This is not, calling out men for enjoying porn. You can enjoy porn. That's not the point. But the point is what is shown is keeping with what many men fantasize about, as well as a focus on what feels good to men. So a lot of porn does not place a lot of importance on women's pleasure. Often women's pleasure is only shown in ways that are desirable to men. Women are shown enjoying the activities, regardless of whether or not most women would find that physically pleasing. And in many cases, what's commonly depicted in porn, many women do not find pleasing. So some types of porn can even capitalize on that fact, that the woman isn't enjoying it. And her pain or discomfort or terror actually can be a focal point. It's also important to note that the realities of the porn industry is far, far from the glamorous lifestyles that most people associate with porn stars. The industry itself faces many challenges, often heavy with sexism and taking advantage of young women. If you'd like a little bit more information about this, there's a really excellent document on Netflix called Hot Girls Wanted. It was released in 2015, but it does feature some of the very concerning aspects of porn, particularly amateur porn, and it's a really great watch. Not that much in the industry has changed in the last 5 years, so really good. I highly recommend it. So all of these things factor into the very complex question of whether or not porn is good. And, we've just started to talk about it. We're not that far into the conversation. There's so much we haven't even covered yet. Things like porn addiction, which I think we will do as its own episode because there's quite a lot to discuss there. But all this discussion about the merits of porn, what it really boils down to is a very simple question. Should you watch it? Is it good? And like I said when we started, as with so many other areas of sexuality, this is a highly, highly personal answer. Porn is entertainment. Some people like it, other people will not. There is no right or wrong answer except what the answer is for you. So you may enjoy watching porn, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just need to remember that it's as real as any other movie or TV show you might watch. And you need to be mindful of your use of it and how it could be impacting your sex life and your sex drive. So we did have one question sent in this week from someone who wished to remain anonymous. And the question was, how do you deal with feeling like the less attractive person in your relationship? So to address that, the first thing we sort of need to think about is that attractiveness is super subjective. What makes someone attracted to someone else is going to vary a lot depending on personal preferences. And a lot of people struggle with self-image and self-esteem. So they have a tendency to see themselves as less attractive than other people actually see them. So the real question that that comes to mind when reading this question is, what is making this feel like an issue? Is there something that your partner is doing? Is it the attention they receive? Is it how they respond to the attention? Is it making you feel insecure? Like, what is making you feel self-conscious about being less attractive as you describe it? Because your partner's with you for a reason. So even if it is true that they are more attractive than you are, that should not make you feel less attractive. I mean, they chose you. Out of all the people they could be with, they chose you. And there's a reason for that. So a little confidence, I think, would go a long way here, and sort of addressing some of those insecurities. And I would say that's probably the first step, is dealing with, these kinds of insecurities and figuring out what they're stemming from. Once you can determine the cause, you can actually take the next step towards addressing the problem and, resolving it. All right, so thank you so much to everyone who tuned in for this episode. Don't forget, if you have any questions of your own, you can please send those into questions@exploresextalk.com. I'd love to hear any questions, thoughts, or comments you have about today's episode, so please don't be shy about leaving a comment or email in your thoughts. Please check out my website, exploresextalk.com. It's got lots of free resources, lots of information. New information is being added all the time. And if you enjoyed this episode, hit that subscribe button, like it, share it, recommend it to a friend. And we will be back with another exciting topic for you next week. So keep your eyes peeled. And in the meantime, stay safe and stay